The galaxy was never quiet, even when the stars looked calm and still. Voices of 1,000 races whispered across the void, and among those whispers one name always returned again and again. Humanity. They spoke of humans as if speaking of fire, something small at first but able to grow into storms that no one could stop. Long ago, the galaxy learned to fear humans. Not because humans ruled the stars, but because they refused to be ruled. Many empires had tried to chain Earth, to force it under banners of alien power. Yet every time humans resisted, they fought with a fire that surprised even themselves. Battles were remembered where human fleets were smaller, weaker, but somehow they won. Somehow they survived. And each time they survived, the galaxy whispered a little louder. Beware of Earth, beware of humanity. But whispers became screams when a strange signal appeared at the edge of the Orion Arm. It was not a normal broadcast, it was old. Older than most living empires, the signal carried only one message, repeated in a voice no alien language could hide. The ultimate warriors are coming. No one knew who sent it. No one knew why it returned now, but the galaxy trembled. On the council worlds, panic spread like fire through dry leaves. Leaders argued in great halls under crystal domes. Some said this was a human trick, a way to frighten them into submission. Others said no. Humans themselves were afraid. Why else would such a message exist? Because if humanity feared something, then the galaxy had even more reason to fear it. War fleets moved in silence. Cloaked ships drifted near Earth, watching from the dark. Their captains spoke in low voices. If humanity was about to awaken something, they had to know. They had to see it before the storm began. And yet none dared strike first because every old story warned. Those who attacked humans without care never lived to tell of it. On Earth itself, life seemed normal. People worked, children played, soldiers trained. Yet in the skies above, a strange unease settled. Astronomers found faint trails in the dark. Like shadows moving across the edge of vision, governments told the people nothing, but the generals knew something was coming. Something very old among the stars, small outposts and colonies whispered too. Traders spoke of warships that did not carry flags, warships with black steel hulls that swallowed light. They moved in silence, appearing and vanishing like ghosts. One captain swore he saw them drifting near a dead moon, their shapes sharp and cruel, their engines burning like ancient fire. When he tried to send a signal, it was blocked, his screens filled with static. And when the static cleared, the ships were gone. The galaxy feared humanity, but now it feared something else. The thought that even humans might not be in full control of these black warships. If they belonged to Earth, why were they silent? Why were they hidden? If they did not belong to Earth, then who commanded them? Whispers became stories, and stories became terror. One alien race, the Yalren, abandoned their colonies close to human space. Entire cities emptied overnight. They left behind towers of glass and steel, food still warm on tables, as if running from a nightmare they could not face. Other races began building weapons faster. Factories burned day and night, yet all knew deep in their hearts. No weapon ever built had broken humanity. The Galactic Council tried to calm the storm, but every speech sounded hollow, every promise thin. Because the signal kept repeating, the ultimate warriors are coming, and no one could shut it off. No one could find the source. In the deep silence between stars, one old alien admiral looked at the map of human victories, battles carved in history where humanity stood against impossible odds and still survived, and he whispered to himself, if these are only the humans we already know, then what will happen when their ultimate warriors arrive? The stars flickered with quiet fire. War fleets turned their guns toward Earth. Traders avoided human space. Entire worlds spoke the name of humanity with trembling voices, and yet Earth remained still. The blue planet turning under the light of its sun, as if unaware of the storm that gathered beyond the dark. But inside the black ships that drifted in the shadows, something stirred, something old and patient. Their engines hummed like the beating of giant hearts. Their weapons slept but waited, and their crews opened their eyes after centuries of silence. And in that moment, the galaxy understood the whispers were not lies. The galaxy understood the fear was real, because the ultimate warriors had indeed returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. The black ships came without warning, drifting into view like shadows pulled from the heart of the void. They did not send greetings. They did not ask for entry. They simply appeared, silent and dark, as if the night sky itself had grown teeth. Merchants were the first to see them. Small freighters carrying ore and food along lonely routes between moons. One freighter captain swore the stars themselves vanished when the ship slid past his window. His scanners screamed with signals too strong for his old systems to read. Then, in an instant, silence. The black ships vanished again, leaving his crew frozen in fear. They spoke no words for hours, for how could they, after staring into the face of death itself? Across the galaxy, news spread faster than light. Every port, every colony, every palace whispered the same words. The Black Fleet has returned. No one could say where they came from. No one could say why they moved so quietly. But everyone agreed on one thing. These ships belonged to humanity, or at least they were born from Earth. Alien rulers gathered in secret halls carved into mountains of crystal and iron. Their voices sharp, their claws tapping on stone tables. They remembered ancient records of Earth's wars, of soldiers who never surrendered, of fleets that fought long after they should have been broken. If humanity now sent a fleet with no name, no banner, and no mercy, then what did it mean for the rest of the galaxy? The Galactic Council debated for days. Great creatures with glowing eyes and wings of glass shouted across the chamber. One faction demanded immediate attack. Destroy the ships before they grew into an unstoppable storm. Another faction argued for peace, for patience, reminding the others that every time someone struck first against Earth, it ended in ruin. Their words echoed against marble walls, but fear filled the air like smoke. While the council argued, the ships moved closer to Earth, sliding across the void with engines that hummed like thunder buried underwater. They formed strange patterns, circles, and lines that no alien mind could understand. To watchers, it looked like a ritual, as if the fleet itself was alive, practicing some ancient dance of war. On Earth, silence turned into suspicion. Telescopes tracked the black hulls. Governments lied to their people, claiming the objects were only asteroids. But ordinary citizens felt the unease in their bones. Children pointed at the night sky where unfamiliar shadows cut across the stars. Old veterans whispered that this was not new, that they had seen such ships once before, in a war that was never spoken about. In the mining colonies near Mars, workers vanished. Whole crews disappeared from tunnels carved into stone. Later, ships found their stations abandoned. Machines still running, meals half-eaten, but no people. Only strange marks on the walls, curved and sharp, like blades dragged across steel. Alien spies watching from hidden satellites sent frantic reports home, describing the fleet in broken detail. Their words were always the same. The ships were not built like other warships. They were too quiet, their weapons hidden, their armor alive with strange ripples of light. Some even swore the ships breathed, exhaling cold mist into the void. In the heart of the Galactic Council, one elder species, the Veyrak, produced forbidden records, scrolls so old they crumbled in their hands. They told of a time when Earth built an army to fight in the dark. Soldiers cut away from the rest of humanity, trained to survive where no one else could. The scrolls said they were put to sleep, locked away when the war ended, for they were too dangerous to exist in peace, and the ships they commanded were buried with them. The chamber fell into silence. The younger races laughed nervously, calling it myth, but deep in their hearts they felt the truth. The Black Fleet was no invention. It was memory, it was return. And so the galaxy faced a choice: strike at the fleet and risk awakening its fury, or wait and risk something worse. In the end, no one moved, no one dared. Fear chained them tighter than any law. But not all feared in the underworld of alien empires. Smugglers and warlords smiled. Some saw opportunity. They dreamed of selling secrets of the fleet, of capturing even a single ship, of stealing its power. Their greed blinded them. They did not understand that these ships could not be owned. They could not be stolen. Above Earth, the Black Fleet waited, their windows glowing faintly with the light of awakening souls. Inside the hulls, men and women opened their eyes after centuries of silence, their faces hard, their bodies strong, their memories sharp as blades. They did not wake confused. They did not wake afraid. They woke with purpose, they woke with orders, and far beyond the edge of sight, something else stirred, something older, darker, hungrier than the Council could imagine. It was this shadow that the Black Fleet had been built to face, and their return was not conquest. It was preparation, the galaxy still whispered. The galaxy still feared, but whispers would soon turn to screams, for Earth's ultimate warriors had truly arrived. And the war that followed would decide not only the fate of humanity, but the fate of every star. They were called the Forgotten Soldiers, though in truth they were never forgotten by those who created them, only hidden, only sealed away in silence so deep that most of humanity believed they were nothing more than rumor. But now, as the black ships drifted above Earth, Their legends returned like thunder rolling across the stars. The galaxy had always feared humans because humans refused to break. But the forgotten soldiers were different. They were built not to survive battles but to end them. Long ago, in a war so secret that even most of Earth never knew it happened, these soldiers had been chosen. Men and women taken from every corner of the planet, the strongest, the cleverest, the most relentless. They were trained in ways no other humans were trained. Trained to fight not just with weapons, but with patience, silence, and the iron will to never surrender. When the war ended, they did not die. They did not retire. Instead, they were placed in deep cryosleep, their ships locked away in forgotten orbits beyond the reach of curious eyes, their orders sealed, their commanders vanished, and slowly their existence faded into rumor. Stories whispered among veterans in dark bars, stories of the Black Fleet that once rose when humanity was at the edge of extinction. Now those stories breathed again. One by one, the soldiers awoke, their pods hissing open inside the dark warships, cold mist curling across steel floors. Their eyes opened without hesitation. No confusion, no fear, only the calm focus of warriors who already knew why they were alive. It was as if they had been sleeping for only a moment, their memories sharp, their discipline unbroken. Each ship carried crews bred for battle, their armor black, their weapons waiting in silence. Some bore scars on their bodies from wars fought centuries ago, scars that had healed in frozen stasis but never faded. They rose from their pods and saluted their captains, voices steady, movements precise, as if time itself bowed before their purpose outside. The alien spies who managed to glimpse the awakening did not understand what they saw. They reported figures moving like shadows across corridors, weapons locking into place without sound, strange banners of Earth long forgotten painted faintly on the walls. One report claimed the ships did not just awaken their crews, but the ships themselves were alive, their hulls glowing faintly with pulses like heartbeats. Among the Council worlds, panic reached its peak. The elder Veyrak declared that these soldiers were humanity's greatest weapon, a weapon so dangerous even Earth once feared to use them. They called them the Forgotten, not because their people had erased them, but because the galaxy demanded they be erased, and yet humanity refused to destroy them. They hid them, waiting for the day they might be needed again. But who had awakened them now? That was the question burning across every empire. Had Earth chosen to release them, or had they awoken on their own? Some whispered that the soldiers never truly slept, that they dreamed together, waiting for a signal, a call from the stars. The forgotten soldiers did not waste time. Their first act was not to attack, but to test, to move their ships in precise formations around Earth's orbit, engines burning like old fire, every maneuver perfect, every movement silent. To outsiders it looked like chaos, ships weaving and crossing at impossible speeds. But to the soldiers it was a dance they had always known, the dance of war down on Earth. Generals and leaders argued in silence, fear on their faces, because they too had heard the rumors. They too knew of the old files buried deep in hidden archives, records that spoke of these soldiers as both protectors and threats. They had been made to save Earth, yes, but they had also been built to obey orders no one alive remembered. Civilians watched from below. Seeing strange shadows cover the stars, some felt pride, thinking humanity had revealed its secret strength. Others felt dread, because they knew nothing so powerful came without cost. In the shadows of space, the soldiers began to speak to each other, their voices deep and steady. They remembered old battles fought in places no one now dared to name, battles against enemies not even the Galactic Council recorded. They spoke of victories carved in blood, and of a war that was never truly finished. And in the deepest chamber of the flagship, their commander sat alone, his face lined with scars that even centuries of sleep could not erase. He touched the old Earth emblem carved into the arm of his chair, and he whispered the words he had been waiting to speak since the last war ended. The enemy will return, and so we rise again. What enemy he spoke of, no one yet knew. Not even Earth's generals, but the soldiers knew. Their purpose was not conquest, not rebellion. Their purpose was war against something greater, something darker than the galaxy itself remembered. The galaxy believed the Black Fleet had come for them, but in truth, the forgotten soldiers had awoken for a far older reason, one that would soon shake every world, every empire, every star. For the warriors of Earth had not returned by chance. They had returned by need, and their awakening meant only one thing. The storm that once almost destroyed them all was rising again, and this time, no one would be safe. The first clash began not with thunder, but with silence. The kind of silence that comes before lightning strikes. Fleets had gathered near a dead moon at the edge of human space. The Galactic Council had sent them, not in full force but as a test, a probe, a question asked in the language of war. The commanders of these alien fleets believed they would face ordinary humans. Perhaps a trick, perhaps an illusion, but what they met instead were the forgotten soldiers. The moon itself was little more than rock and shadow. Its surface cracked, its heart cold. A place where no one would care if ships burned. The alien fleet arrived first, shimmering vessels of gold and crystal, wings spread like knives of light. Their captain spoke with confidence. They would surround the Black Fleet, measure its strength, and return home with answers. They did not yet understand they would not return at all. From the dark came the Black Fleet, silent, patient. Their warships moved like predators circling prey. Their hulls swallowed light. Their engines hummed with a rhythm older than the Council itself. They did not send a greeting. They did not offer a warning. They simply drifted closer, forming a wall of shadow between Earth and the intruders. The alien commanders hesitated. They had expected a message, a show of diplomacy, perhaps even fear. Instead, they found themselves staring into black steel that gave nothing. No weakness, no voice, no soul, and so, as pride demanded, they fired first. The first volley of plasma lanced across the void. Bright rivers of fire that lit the stars, but the Black Fleet did not flinch. Their shields shimmered only faintly, absorbing the attack as if it were nothing more than rain against stone. Then the reply came. The forgotten soldiers struck with precision. Their weapons were not loud, not wild, but sharp. Every shot landed exactly where it was meant to land. Engines exploded, wings shattered, and alien ships spun into the void, broken before they even realized they were in danger. The entire first wave ended in silence, only burning wrecks tumbling across the stars. Inside the alien flagships, fear spread like a disease. Crews shouted, captains barked orders, but nothing mattered. The Black Fleet was faster, sharper, colder. Their formations cut through enemy lines like blades slicing silk. No wasted fire, no wasted motion. It was not a battle, it was a demonstration. One alien admiral tried to retreat, shouting that this was madness, that they were not fighting soldiers. They were fighting something else, but his ship never made it out. 3 black warships turned as one, their weapons flaring, and his vessel vanished in a bloom of fire that painted the moon's surface in red light. From orbit, the battle looked like a storm, flashes of fire sparking against the endless night. But within the Black Fleet, the forgotten soldiers were calm, their eyes steady, their voices low as they called maneuvers. They had been trained for this, born for this, their unity absolute in less than an hour. The alien fleet was ash and silence, their ships torn apart, their survivors drifting helpless in escape pods. The Black Fleet did not chase them. They did not slaughter those who fled. They allowed the broken survivors to scatter back into the galaxy because they knew the message was more powerful than destruction. The message was simple. Humanity's ultimate warriors had returned, and they could not be challenged. Words spread like wildfire. The survivors spoke in trembling voices. They described ships that fought like living things, soldiers who never missed, captains who never hesitated. They said it was as if the void itself had chosen to fight for Earth. The council halls erupted in chaos. Some demanded all-out war, others demanded surrender, but all of them understood one truth. The balance of power had shattered. On Earth, generals watched with unease. They had not ordered the clash. They had not given commands. Yet the forgotten soldiers had acted on their own, following orders older than any living human could remember. And though they had won, Earth's leaders felt no triumph, only dread, because these soldiers were not tools of government. They were tools of destiny. Among the people of Earth, pride grew. Voices rose in streets and cities. Humanity had shown its strength again, and the galaxy trembled, yet whispers of fear lingered. For if the forgotten soldiers were this powerful, what would stop them if they turned against the very world they came from? Meanwhile, deep within the flagship of the Black Fleet, the commander stood alone, looking at the burning wreckage drifting past his window. His eyes did not shine with victory. They shone with memory. He whispered to his crew that this was only the beginning, that the true enemy had yet to reveal itself. The clash near the dead moon was only practice, only a test far beyond the edges of the battle. Something stirred. Something that had watched the clash with cold eyes. Something that had waited for centuries, and now awakened by the fire of war, it began to move. The forgotten soldiers had won their first battle, but in doing so, They had announced their return not only to the galaxy, but to the ancient darkness that once nearly destroyed them all. The silence after victory was not peace. It was warning, for the storm was only just beginning. Fear moves faster than light, and after the dead moon burned with wreckage, fear spread across the galaxy like a wave crashing over every world. No message had to be sent. No council order had to be declared. The truth was written in the eyes of every survivor who limped home. The Black Fleet had awakened, and the forgotten soldiers had returned. Alien merchants whispered in hushed voices across smoky bars, saying that no fleet could stand against the humans now. Nobles in crystal palaces locked their doors tighter at night, imagining black warships circling their own skies. Even soldiers of alien empires, proud and battle-scarred, looked to the stars with dread, because they knew what it meant when a fleet destroyed an army without losing even one ship. In the Galactic Council chamber, chaos ruled. Races shouted over each other, their voices shaking the pillars of marble and steel. One delegate cried that they must unite and strike Earth now before it was too late. Another hissed that such a move would be suicide, that to attack humanity's ultimate warriors was to sign their own death warrants. The younger species begged for protection. The older species spoke in bitter tones, remembering the last time humans stood at the edge of war. And while fear burned in the halls of power, whispers took a darker turn across the frontier. Some alien races began sending secret envoys to Earth, their leaders kneeling not from respect but from survival. They offered trade, they offered soldiers. They offered loyalty in exchange for mercy. They would rather serve humans than be broken by them. Others chose the opposite path, hidden in shadow. Desperate plots formed. Some empires spoke of building weapons so large they could shatter entire planets. Others began searching old ruins and forgotten archives, hunting for ancient technology to match the Black Fleet. But all of them knew deep inside these were only hopes, because humanity had already proven that when all else fails, they endure, they fight, they win. Meanwhile, within the Black Fleet itself, whispers of fear existed too. But they were not fear of aliens, they were fear of memory. The soldiers spoke quietly among themselves, voices carrying weight like iron. They remembered what had truly awakened them. They remembered the darkness that once devoured worlds and nearly reached Earth. They spoke not of conquest but of warning, because they knew the enemy they had been built to face was not yet here, but it was coming. The commander of the Black Fleet stood in silence on the flagship's bridge, his face lit by the stars beyond the glass. He had seen the terror spread. He had heard the cries of the dying at the dead moon. Yet none of this moved him. What chilled him was the shadow he felt pressing from beyond. The same shadow that had once required humanity to create the forgotten soldiers. The same shadow that would return on Earth. Leaders tried to maintain control. Speeches filled the airwaves, promises of peace and security. But the truth was leaking through. People were beginning to see the truth in the sky with their own eyes. Black warships cutting sharp lines against the stars. Cities filled with both pride and unease. Some marched in the streets cheering the strength of humanity. Others whispered that the Black Fleet might no longer answer to Earth at all. In distant colonies, the fear was sharper. Farmers abandoned their fields. Miners refused to work in tunnels. They said the shadows of the Black Fleet reached even there, that one day they would come not to defend but to command. And though these were only rumors, they grew with every telling. The galaxy had feared humanity before, yes, but now fear was evolving into something greater, something heavier. Because if humanity had warriors like these, what enemy had forced them to create them in the first place? And if that enemy had ever been defeated, why were the soldiers returning now? The council did not ask these questions out loud, but in the quiet hours, when their chambers were empty and their halls silent, every leader asked themselves the same thing. If humans feared something enough to unleash the Black Fleet, then what horror was waiting just beyond the edge of sight? In secret, some alien spies tried to infiltrate the Black Fleet, cloaked ships approaching with stealth systems burning low. They hoped to capture data, to steal secrets, but none of them returned. Only fragments of broken signals drifted back, static filled with faint whispers, as if the ships themselves were alive and watching. The forgotten soldiers did not strike again, not yet, but their silence was louder than any cannon. They held their positions, they sharpened their weapons, they waited, and that patience filled the galaxy with dread, because every empire knew. When warriors like that waited, it was not peace they waited for, it was war among the stars. Far beyond the maps of known space, faint ripples stirred, shadows moved, and ancient signals began to pulse again. The true enemy, the one that the forgotten soldiers had been created to fight. was not yet here, but it was close. Its hunger was awakening, and the galaxy could not yet see it. The aliens feared humanity, but inside the Black Fleet, the soldiers feared something else. They feared the enemy that would return, and the knowledge that when it came, the galaxy would not be ready. The galaxy would not be united. The galaxy would not understand until it was too late. And so the fear spread through every council, every colony, every home. Fear of the humans, fear of the soldiers, fear of the silence between the stars, because silence meant only one thing. The storm had not yet begun, and when it did, no one would be safe. The truth began to unfold, not in shouts, but in whispers. Deep inside the flagship of the Black Fleet, where old records were unlocked and voices from the past flickered like ghosts across the screens, the forgotten soldiers gathered in silence, their eyes sharp, their bodies still, as their commander revealed what many had suspected but none dared to say. Their awakening was not for conquest. It was for war against something older, darker, and far more dangerous than any empire in the galaxy. The soldiers listened without fear, because they had always known this day would come. They were made for it. Long ago, when Earth was younger and still fighting to claim its place among the stars, a shadow had come from beyond the edges of known space. It was not a race, not an empire, but a hunger. A swarm of living ships that consumed everything they touched. Worlds, moons, even suns themselves. The records showed oceans boiled, skies burned, entire civilizations erased in weeks, and humanity had stood at the very edge of extinction. That was when the forgotten soldiers had been born. Humanity had taken its strongest and carved them into weapons sharper than steel. Their ships were not only machines, but living engines bound to their crews, vessels built to adapt, to endure, to fight an enemy that could not be reasoned with. The first war had been long, bloody and silent, for the Council never knew it happened. Humanity fought alone, and when at last the enemy was beaten back into the void, the soldiers were sealed away, because their very existence was too dangerous to leave awake. Now the signals returning from the dark confirmed the fear. The ancient enemy was stirring again. Faint pulses echoed in the void like the beating of monstrous hearts. Far-off colonies were vanishing, their lights snuffed out without a trace. Ships sent to investigate never returned. Only fragments of broken data showed shapes like shadows wrapped around stars. The commander's voice was steady as stone. Humanity had not awakened the forgotten soldiers to frighten the galaxy. They had not risen to conquer. They had risen because the storm was coming back. And this time it would not stop at the edge of Earth. It would devour everything, alien, human, all life alike. The Council, of course, knew none of this truth. They only saw the power of the Black Fleet, and they only felt the fear of humanity's strength. In their chambers, the debates grew louder. Some leaders screamed that the humans must be destroyed before they destroyed all others. Others cried out that perhaps humanity was the only shield between them and oblivion. But no one trusted, no one believed. The galaxy was too fractured, too filled with old grudges to stand together on Earth. A few generals uncovered fragments of the same files, hidden in locked vaults beneath stone and steel. When they read the words, their hands shook, not from cowardice but from understanding. They realized that the Black Fleet was not simply Earth's weapon, it was the galaxy's last hope. Yet the Council would never see it that way. And so Earth itself was trapped between pride and desperation. Among ordinary people, rumors grew stranger. Traders spoke of entire sectors going dark. No signals, no traffic, only silence. As if the stars themselves were dying. Smugglers whispered of ghost ships drifting across the void, their hulls twisted, their windows filled with shadows that moved like living smoke. The galaxy thought these were only stories, but the soldiers knew better. They had seen such things before, and they knew what followed inside the Black Fleet. Preparations began. Weapons were tested, engines burned hotter, soldiers drilled with a rhythm that had not faded even after centuries of sleep. They did not prepare for glory. They did not prepare for conquest. They prepared for survival, because they understood what the galaxy did not. Survival would soon be all that mattered. The commander stared at the map of stars, his finger resting on the sectors already gone silent. His voice low, he told his crew that the first wave of the enemy was near, smaller, weaker. Scouts sent to test the galaxy's defenses. If the Council did not listen, if the races did not unite, the swarm would spread too fast, and when the main horde arrived, nothing would remain. Yet he also knew the truth. The galaxy would not unite until it was too late. They would waste time fearing the humans instead of fearing the real enemy. They would argue in their halls while the stars burned, and so the Black Fleet stood ready, waiting not for the permission of Earth, not for the approval of the Council, But for the enemy they had always been meant to fight. They would rise as they had risen before. They would fight even if the galaxy fought against them, because their orders were older than any empire, older even than the Council itself, far beyond the charts of known space. Deep in the void where light itself seemed to die, the ancient hunger stirred, its ships unfolding like wings of black fire, their voices a chorus of silence. They moved with patience, with purpose, with hunger that could never be satisfied, and the first tendrils of their return were already reaching out. The galaxy thought humanity was the storm, but the soldiers knew better. Humanity was the shield. The storm had not yet arrived, but when it did, the stars themselves would tremble, and only the forgotten soldiers would stand ready. The stars trembled as fleets gathered, not just human fleets, not just alien armadas, but everything the galaxy could muster. Ships that had never before fought side by side now burned their engines in the same direction, because at last the truth could no longer be denied. The ancient enemy had returned. The swarm was here. It began with silence, whole sectors going dark. Then came the screams of colonies as their signals were cut short. Then came the wreckage drifting in the void, twisted metal and shattered moons. By the time the Council admitted the truth, it was already too late. The swarm was advancing, and nothing in their history had prepared them for what they now faced. The Black Fleet moved first, their engines roaring like thunder beneath the stars. The forgotten soldiers had waited centuries for this moment, and now they rose without hesitation, their ships sliding into formation with a grace that was terrifying to watch. Every maneuver sharp, every line perfect, their black hulls glowing faintly with pulses like living fire. Behind them came the hesitant fleets of the Council, ships of crystal, of bone, of iron and flame. So many races, so many designs, all carrying the same desperate hope. But even as they gathered, fear ate at them. Whispers spread across their comms. What if the humans had lied? What if this was all a trick to gather them in one place? What if they were fighting not a common enemy, but humanity itself? The forgotten soldiers did not argue. They did not reassure. They only spoke a single promise across the comms: stand with us or die alone. And for the first time, the galaxy listened. The enemy came from the dark like a storm of living shadows. Ships that were not ships, bodies that were not bodies. They moved like predators in storms at once, their forms twisting, reshaping, endless. Their weapons were their very being. Tendrils of black light cutting through shields, mouths of fire swallowing smaller ships whole. The void burned as they advanced. The first clash was chaos. Alien fleets broke lines. Their formations shattered as the swarm tore through them like paper. Crystal ships cracked and shattered. Bone ships screamed as their hulls split open. Entire squadrons vanished in the first minutes. The Council panicked, captains shouting over one another, fleets turning to flee. Then the Black Fleet struck, and the chaos turned into war. The forgotten soldiers moved like a blade slicing through the storm, their ships weaving between enemy tendrils with impossible speed, their cannons firing in patterns too precise for chance. Every shot burned a hole in the swarm. Every maneuver cut apart the enemy's advance where the Council broke. The Black Fleet held, their unity unshaken, their purpose clear. The commander's voice rang through the comms, cold and steady, directing fire, shifting formations. His orders were iron. His soldiers obeyed without pause, and slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. The alien races, seeing the humans stand, began to gather their courage. Their ships regrouped behind the Black Fleet, their weapons joining the storm, and for the first time in living memory, the galaxy fought as one. The battle was fire and shadow. Suns shook with the fury of the clash. Warships burned so bright they became falling stars. The swarm pushed harder, adapting, reshaping. For every enemy ship destroyed, two more seemed to rise. But the forgotten soldiers did not break. They fought as if every strike was destiny, as if they had already seen this war and knew they must endure. One soldier's ship, its engines aflame, rammed straight into the heart of a swarm leviathan. The explosion tore a hole in the enemy lines, giving the Council fleets a chance to regroup. Another squadron of the Black Fleet flew straight into a swarm cloud. Vanishing from sight moments later, the cloud itself detonated, scattering debris across the void. The galaxy had always feared humanity, but now they saw the truth. They saw why, for when the storm came, only the humans stood unbroken. Only the humans turned fear into fire, and in that fire the galaxy found its courage. But victory did not come easy. The battle raged for hours, then days, ships falling, stars burning, entire fleets erased. The swarm never tired, never slowed. It pressed from every angle, seeking to overwhelm. And though the Black Fleet held, even they could not hold forever. At last the commander gave the order no one wished to hear, the ultimate maneuver, the one written in their oldest code. The Black Fleet shifted, pulling the enemy deeper into their formation, drawing them away from the Council fleets, away from the fragile unity. The forgotten soldiers became the shield, the lure, the sacrifice. Alien admirals watched in shock as the black ships vanished into the storm, swallowed by shadows, their signals cutting off one by one. But in that sacrifice, the swarm was broken, its center split, its advance shattered, and the Council fleet struck with everything they had, driving the enemy back, burning the void with desperate fire. The battle ended not with triumph but with silence. The swarm retreated into the dark. Their hunger not ended, only delayed. But the galaxy still lived, the stars still burned, because the forgotten soldiers had given everything to hold the line. And as the survivors floated among the wreckage, one truth burned brighter than any sun. The galaxy had feared humanity for centuries, but now they understood humanity was not the threat. Humanity was the reason they still existed. Yet deep in their hearts they also knew the swarm would return, and when it did, the question would remain, would the humans rise again, or had their ultimate warriors already given their last breath? The war was over, but the silence it left behind was heavier than the roar of battle. The swarm had been pushed back into the void, their shadows torn apart by fire and sacrifice, yet the stars did not shine with victory. They burned dim as if mourning, because the cost of survival was written across the wreckage of the Black Fleet. Where once hundreds of black warships had stood unbroken, now only a handful drifted, their hulls scarred, their engines flickering like dying hearts. The rest were gone, shattered in the storm. Their crews vanished into the darkness. They had not fled, they had not surrendered. They had chosen to burn themselves out so the galaxy could live, and their loss echoed louder than triumph. The Council celebrated anyway, their halls filled with voices claiming credit. Alien leaders spoke of unity, of courage, of how their fleets had struck the final blows. But in the shadows of their words, every delegate remembered the truth. It had been humanity's warriors who held the line. It had been the forgotten soldiers who gave everything, and without them no empire, no race, no world would have survived. On Earth the news spread with fire. People wept and cheered at once, proud of the victory, broken by the price. Families searched the skies for the ships that would never return. Songs were sung for the soldiers who had risen from silence only to fall again. And though no alien leader admitted it, every world whispered the same truth. The galaxy lived because of humans. The survivors of the Black Fleet did not claim glory. Their captains stood silent, their faces marked by exhaustion. They did not march into the council chambers demanding reward. They did not threaten. They only returned to orbit around Earth, scarred ships circling their homeworld like guardians too weary to rest. They had done their duty. They had kept their oath, and that was enough. But across the galaxy, fear remained. It had changed its shape, but it had not faded before. The races feared what humanity might do if they chose conquest. Now they feared something deeper, for they had seen the forgotten soldiers, and they understood why humanity was different. Where other races sought safety, humans sought survival. Where others bent under terror, humans stood and fought, and in that defiance was a strength no weapon could match. Some worlds bowed openly, sending envoys to Earth with gifts and treaties, offering alliances they once swore they would never sign. They came not out of love, but out of respect, because they understood now that standing against humanity was to stand against the very fire of survival itself. Other worlds plotted in silence, fearful of what might happen if the Black Fleet rose again. They built weapons in secret. They trained armies in the dark, telling themselves that next time they would not be caught unprepared. But deep down they knew the truth. Even with all their weapons, even with all their plans, they would never be ready to face warriors like those. In the quiet corridors of the surviving warships, the forgotten soldiers gathered, their armor scarred, their eyes heavy. Some had lost comrades they had known for centuries, comrades they had slept beside in frozen silence, comrades they had awakened beside only to watch them fall. Yet none of them wept, none of them cursed. They accepted their fate as they always had. Because they were not built for peace, they were built for storms. Their commander stood once more before the galaxy, not in person but in a broadcast that reached every world. His voice was low, steady, unshaken. He spoke no threats, he made no boasts, he only said this: "The enemy is not gone, it is only waiting, it will return, and when it does, you must decide whether to fight with us or die without us." Then the signal ended and silence fell again. The council trembled at those words. Because they knew he spoke the truth. The swarm had not been destroyed. Only delayed, it would come again. And when it did, no amount of politics would save them. Only warriors who had already faced the storm would stand a chance. And so the galaxy changed slowly, quietly, but deeply. Old enemies signed uneasy truces. Trade routes reopened under human protection. Alien children grew up learning stories not of their own heroes, but of the nameless soldiers in black ships who had stood when no one else could. The galaxy did not love humanity, but it respected them, and respect born of fear is the strongest respect of all. Yet on Earth itself, the survivors of the Black Fleet remained apart, their ships orbiting silently, their crews rarely walking among ordinary people. They were still warriors, still weapons. They had not returned to be welcomed home. They had returned to be ready, for they knew the enemy would rise again, and when it did, they would answer no matter the cost. The galaxy thought it had feared humanity before, but now it truly understood. Humanity was not dangerous because of greed or conquest. Humanity was dangerous because it would never bow, never stop, never die quietly, and as long as even one soldier remained, the fire of Earth would burn on, and in the endless dark beyond the stars, the swarm stirred, their hunger unbroken, their silence waiting. The war was not the end. It was only the beginning, but the galaxy was not the same anymore, because now it had seen humanity's ultimate warriors, and it knew that when the storm returned, the soldiers of Earth would rise again, and nothing would ever be the same.